G'day guys, welcome to another episode of the TryPod. Something a little bit different today. We've got the NFL draft in a couple of days' time, and we have on our resident NFL expert, Neddy, an absolute diehard Carolina Panthers tragic. Mate, how are you going?
I'm good, bro. Before we get into it, we'll have to sort out the alpha and the beta situation. Am I on your show or are you on my show?
Mate, I think for this one in particular, I'm on your show. I think obviously we give out a ton of NFL bets throughout the season, but college football we give out a few. But you're certainly more in the know with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, this time of year I actually don't mind it because you sort of have that bit of a rest from sport and all that sort of stuff. You sort of get your mind into gear and you can spend time diving into the draft and diving into all the bullshit. I will say to people around this time, that's when all the bullshit starts coming out, and it is lying season about the draft, so be careful what you read because it's a pretty good time of the year to get caught with your dick in the honey jar.
Yeah, and what I was going to ask you, mate, obviously it's a different kind of thing this year because with coronavirus and everything, they're doing the draft virtual, and I was going to ask you a couple of things. Firstly, if you think that the virtual draft could actually be more fun. I know a lot of people have complaints about, the draft being a little bit boring and stale and that kind of stuff. And secondly, if, all this coronavirus stuff has a fair impact on, the actual draft itself, less information about injuries, medical evaluations, testing numbers, all that kind of stuff.
I think it's going to have a massive impact, to be honest. There was a report actually that came out this morning. The NFL did a bit of a mock draft to make sure all teams were across how they were going to do it and if it was going to work. And the very first pick, the Bengals fucked up, and their pick actually didn't come through till 2 minutes and 30 seconds later than it should have. So
Jesus.
I think there's going to be a bit of concern. I'll talk about it a bit later when it comes to trades and whatnot. But again, people like Tua are going to be affected. And some of the other guys that have had all right college careers go to the combine and maybe they bombed out. They don't get a second look at the pro days and all that sort of thing. I think it's going to be a lot harder for some of the guys that might have sort of jumped through. I think teams are just going to go with more of the safer option this year.
Yeah, that's a fair call. And I agree. Tua's probably the guy that gets affected the most. Obviously, a lot of question marks over his injury status and that kind of thing. But before we get started, mate, I thought I'd just ask you, just a general rundown of the things that you look for in terms of, betting on the draft and where people are going to fall. And has this changed at all because of the coronavirus, the things that you sort of look for?
Not particularly, mate. Like there's a lot of the time there's people that I trust that I follow and read up on that don't sort of get caught in the bullshit. And if you get onto something early enough, you sort of notice that's usually the way things are going to go. It's as the weeks go on that you'll hear things wish-wash back and forth where people, like we said, lie and try and jostle for position and try and get value. Like the Giants reported, I think it was midnight last night when I was going to bed, that they are looking very seriously into Justin Herbert.
Yep.
Absolute crock of shit. They spent the 6th-round pick on Daniel Jones last year. So you just got to be careful what you read and who you trust. And then in terms of other things, sometimes information will come in later, and we'll talk about a couple of blokes that have really picked up steam the last couple of weeks, and they were the people I jumped on. So it's pretty about being disciplined and not being too crazy with what you do. Again, it is lying season. We've got a fair few bets that we can roll through here. We could get completely fucking steamrolled, or we could have a good day, but just got to be careful who you listen to.
Oh, definitely, mate. And usually, generally you do great with your NFL bets, and you usually do great come NFL draft time. I thought before we get into your best bets, maybe because obviously some people are going to watch the draft, some people aren't. But I mean, if you are going to watch it, you're probably watching, the first round, and maybe you switch off after that. But you're definitely watching the top 10 picks. I think they're the most interesting. So I thought we'd run down just the top 10 picks and how you kind of see that order play out. So obviously, like you mentioned, the Bengals have the number 1 pick, and obviously consensus is Joe Burrow, national championship winner, Heisman Trophy winner. Can the consensus 1 pick? Do you see any situation that the Bengals do not take Joe Burrow?
No, not at all. I know things started to leak out that maybe Joe didn't want to play there, but I think that's a total crock of shit. Like what I like to do with a lot of the rookie quarterbacks that come through is I try and not like them as they come out, so that way you don't sort of buy into the hype and then you sort of get conned over when it comes to the betting side of it or how good they actually are. You can sort of fall into that trap. So I sort of did that with Joe, and I was sort of against him more. Like a lot of people were holding him pretty high regards and whatnot, but I sort of felt like he didn't have any of the elite traits that you really look for in a first pick. he doesn't have elite speed or arm strength or accuracy. Like, he's very good there. The only thing that you would say that he is sort of elite in is he's just sort of pocket awareness and his sort of fundamentals. And like, you look at LSU as well, like, they've been stacked for years. Like, the amount of people that come out of there, Patrick Peterson, Honey Badger Fournette, Odell Landry, and it's always been a case of they just have never had a quarterback. All of a sudden, they get a fucking quarterback, and you look what happens. It was 60 touchdowns, and I think it's the second best ever completion percentage in college. It was 76.2. And they just fucking steamrolled just about everyone. And it was hard for me to be high on him because you've got, I think it's like 6 potential first rounders in his team. His 2 wide receivers, like as strong as the wide receiver class is this year. There's another bloke who's coming out next year called Jamar Chase. If he was coming out in this draft, he would be the consensus number 1 wide receiver. So when you're surrounded with that much talent, it was hard for me to be big on him, and I sort of picked on him in that sense. But then as it sort of went along and I saw some of the highlight tapes and games and stuff like that, I noticed that he was actually fucking phenomenal when everything started crashing down, going to shit. Like, a lot of his big plays are him scrambling around, moving, and he doesn't just take off up the middle, get a couple of yards. He will take off and then cut to the side to buy more time. And that, I think, is elite for him, and that's something that gives me a big bump for him because a lot of the better quarterbacks, so you have Pat Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, I'm not saying he's at their level, they excel when everything goes to shit. Like, Billy O'Brien has been trying to kill Deshaun Watson for the last couple of years, but he still plays amazing football. So I think that's something that is in his favour, but I don't think he's as good as the fellow that's coming out from Clemson next year, Old Sunshine.
Yep, that's a fair call. And now moving on to the number 2 pick, Ned, the Redskins. Now, you think it's pretty obvious that Chase Young goes here at number 2. Now, what I was going to ask you is, now, is taking a QB an option for the Skins at number 2? I know they have Dwayne Haskins there, obviously, but I mean, judging by the short amount of time that we've seen him play, it's a lot of people sort of saying that he is not really the future of the franchise. So, you make Riverboat Ron there now. Would he consider it all a QB? You think they have to take Chase Young just for the talent there?
Well, it's actually got leaked there for a little while that they were looking into Tua, and there was a lot of reports that came out about Haskins that he wasn't serious last year. Like, he wasn't rocking up on time, he wasn't getting there, wasn't putting in the effort, and he was sort of on the outer of a lot of the teams. Now, I think it is a possibility, but I think Ron Rivera, he's a defensive coach, and one of his keys to being at the Redskins was that he had to have more power. He wanted to pick and choose his team. So this guy, Chase Young, is the best player in the draft, above Burrow, above anyone. He is by far the best player in the draft.
Yeah.
Ron's going to take him because immediately that gives them the best defensive front in the NFL. He's got him, Ioannidis, I think Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, completely stacked up front. They got Montez Sweat last year. This guy is what you look for. Like, when Myles Garrett came out, he was the benchmark, the size, the speed, everything except doesn't crush Mason Rudolph's fucking skull with a helmet. He was the guy that you sort of look for. And now Chase Young, this is the benchmark. Like, this guy's 265 pounds, and he just fucks shit up. And one of the best traits for him, so with your defensive ends, when they come down, one of the main things that an offensive tackle can do, not just to try and steamroll them, they'll just try and push them out. So your quarterback drops back, they're coming around. You want your offensive tackle to push him to around 10 yards so he goes past the quarterback steps up, throws the ball. That's one of their main things. The thing with Chase is that he can get and set the edge on about a 7 or 8 yard sort of curl in that you'll see. So the quarterback will step up and step right into his interior offensive line. He gets a lot of sacks there. He fucking bullies people. I was watching this game against Penn State. He had 3 sacks against this one left tackle, and he just kept using the same move over and over. And the thing is that this guy eventually adjusted to it. The thing I didn't like was Chase didn't adjust. Like, he still had 3 sacks. I'm not bagging him for it, but if he just bull rushed this dude because he was standing flat-footed and almost hugging him, he would have just steamrolled him. He would have got 6, 7 sacks. This dude's a generational talent. He's the next Julius Peppers. Have to take him 100%.
All right, fair call. It's high praise, that's for sure. And so at number 3, you got the Detroit Lions. You think they're taking the Ohio State cornerback Jeff Okudah?
Yes, correct. So here's a drinking game for anyone. If you watch the draft, every time anyone says this is when the draft starts, that's when you'll be drinking. Right. So
take one now.
I only got water. I only just woke up.
Living the dream, mate. Living the lockdown dream.
I took a drink because I wanted to, not because you told me to.
Yeah, fair.
All right. So the way the Patriots, we know, run their defense, they love a shutdown corner. I think Patricia's sort of going to value Okudah very much the same. He's the highest rated corner coming out of college since Patrick Peterson. The thing that is concerning me about this is that how hard the Lions are trying to get out of this pick. Now, if someone was going to come up to look for one of those quarterbacks, I feel like what we talked about before with all this virus shit going on, someone would have already done it.
Right.
I don't think they're going to wait for on the day with all this technology lag and possibilities and extra risk that they're actually going to move in there. So
that's fair.
I think the Lions end up taking this pick. I think it's between that or a defensive lineman, because I sort of have issues with Okudah that he's so fundamentally sound. That's why he's better than all the other corners in the group.
Right.
He didn't give up a defensive penalty his whole time he was in fucking college. But his speed and all that sort of stuff is not elite. He doesn't have top-end speed. You'll see him sort of hang with the receiver and his burst. He'll get an interception, break the ball up, all that sort of stuff. But when you look at the best over history, Darrell Revis, your Deion Sanders, even Lattimore over at the Saints, those guys have top-end speed that's fucking elite. Ohio State, we know they coach their guys up really well. They've had Eli Apple come out. He was a top 10 pick. He's pretty much a fucking bust.
Yep.
Gary Conley came out the other year. He's 24th pick. He's already on his second team. And Denzel Ward, I think 2 years ago, he was the fourth selection of the draft. Should he have been taken that high? No fucking way. So I sort of have my reservations around him. I think he's awesome because I love fucking corners. But
it's hard to find a good corner as well. Like, there's not that many elite corners in the league.
Exactly. And my sort of thing with it is that some of the other guys that are in this group, because it's actually a very strong class, they have better physical traits than him. So if they get taught up the way that he was taught up, where is he actually going to sit on that fucking pedestal? But I think the pick naturally will be Okudah here.
Yeah, that's a fair call. And then the New York Giants have the number 4 pick, and you're going with Isaiah Simmons, the linebacker from Clemson.
Yeah, I think it sort of comes down to either him or an offensive lineman here. We know Dave Gettleman loves his mollies, his big offensive lineman or D lineman. He's notoriously sort of done that over the years. And the one thing with the Giants is they're actually notorious for having leaks. Last year, it actually got out that they were taking Daniel Jones. The problem was no one fucking believed him.
Right.
Now, with Isaiah Simmons, I think they're sort of looking at possibly like a Luke Kuechly type, even though he's way more versatile. He played 253 snaps at slot corner, 166 at safety, 132 at outside linebacker, 72 at inside, and 12 at outside corner.
Yeah, right.
Fucking does everything. 4.3 speed, like a Derwin James type. Instinct and ability off the fucking chart. Fast, long, rangy baller.
Okay, we might have lost you there for a second, Ned. Alrighty, and at number 5, the Miami Dolphins. Now, this seems easy, right, Ned? A lot of mock drafts. I mean, nearly every mock draft is saying that they're either picking up Tua or Herbert here. But some mock drafts are saying they're not even going to pick quarterback at all. They have to take a QB here, right?
I think they do have to take a quarterback here. If they are after Tua, I think they've fucking played this perfectly. Like, originally the leaks came out that that's who they were going to take, but the leaks didn't come from them. It was coming from everyone else. And as it's sort of gone on, it's really been strong that they're going after Justin Herbert. So they're sort of hoping, I guess, maybe what they're playing is that someone jumps them, takes Justin Herbert, like a ha-ha type moment, and then Tua falls to them. Right. But I actually do believe they are going after Herbert. Justin Herbert is your fucking Mitchell Trubisky. He didn't play an aggressive offense. 30% of his plays were all screens and underneath, and he's just a head-scratching quarterback. You see some throws that are spot-on, absolutely perfect, and then you see some where he just throws the ball right into horrible interceptions. He played a game against Arizona State, and this safety was killing him in cover 3. Every time he came across, he was either blowing up their wide receivers or intercepting the ball, and he just kept throwing it. And imagine if you had, let's say he goes to the Dolphins, he has DeVante Parker. DeVante Parker is going to be right up his fucking ass because every time he goes out every week, he's getting him blown up.
Oh, yeah.
So he's very, in that sort of regard, I would not pick him there, but that's what I believe is going to happen.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. And I think, honestly, they have to take a QB. After all these years of just terrible QB play, they have to take someone there that's going to at least have a chance of being a franchise QB. Next up is the Chargers. Now, I've got to ask you here, Ned, you've got Phillip Rivers is gone now. You've got Tyrod Taylor in, and I don't know. Obviously, he's on a 2-year deal, I think, and I don't know if they think of Tyrod Taylor as the future of the LA Chargers, but is that a possibility of taking a QB here as well, do you think?
I think it is a possibility, but I think, again, with a lot of the medical stuff that's going on with Tua, I think it's a bit risky. I think if Isaiah Simmons, who we spoke about before, if he's on the board and they take him, that defense would be fucking incredible.
Yeah, true.
Incredible. And if they have someone like him, I think it's fine to have Tyrod Taylor because that defense is so stacked now with Chris Harris and Bosa and
It's a
Casey
good
Hayward.
defense, yeah.
They could just play defense and Tyrod would play it safe. I think Cam Newton's still a possibility to be brought in here.
Okay.
I still think around this area, though, they're probably going to look towards an O-line, whether it be Jedrick Wills, and Tristan Wirfs would be the two main people there. I think Tua has a possibility to fall, but I think the Chargers sort of go a different route there because they got let go of Okung. They need a left tackle. I think that's where they go.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And this will be a fun one. Ned, the Carolina Panthers at number 7. Now, first of all, I guess, Cam Newton gone, which I don't want to bring that up too much. I know it makes you sad. And you got Teddy Bridgewater in there. Now, if, Tua or Herbert are on the board at that point, are you taking them? And I guess, firstly, I'll ask you, who would you like to see them take, and who do you think they will take at this position?
I think the quarterbacks will be gone, so I don't think they'll be taking one there. Originally, I thought the pick was going to be Derrick Brown. That's what it sort of sounded like, the big defensive tackle from Auburn. Absolute game wrecker, but that was sort of predecessed on the fact that Carolina's run defense was that fucking bad. I thought they were just going to plug and play right there. I think if Simmons is on the board here, I know I'll stop saying that soon, but he would be a possibility for a pick.
Yep.
But there's one guy that's sort of going under the radar a little bit and falls right into the Panthers sort of philosophy on how they draft. So they're really big. Well, Marty Herney, the GM, is really big at drafting people with high percentile sort of athletic traits. Jonathan Stewart was 98.9, Cam was 100, Luke was 100, DJ Moore 96.5, and Brian Burns last year was 99. Now, if the board sort of falls the way of Okudah, Chase Young, and Burrow gone, the highest percentile player on the board is actually a guy called CJ Henderson, who is a cornerback. He is athletic freak as well. He's far more athletic than Okudah. He's just not as well trained, and I think he sort of lands perfectly in their lap for that situation. They got rid of Bradbury. He's not a very good tackler, but who fucking cares? Show me a highlight of Deion Sanders tackling someone. I don't fucking care. I think Henderson will be the pick here. It's either him or Brown, but I'm going for Henderson.
All right, that's a fair call. Next up, Arizona Cardinals pick at number 8. Now, were an exciting team this year. It took a while to get going, I guess, but constantly in kind of shootouts. The defense struggled a lot last year, but I mean, you've got Kyler Murray there. He's going to be improved. You pick up DeAndre Hopkins in the offseason, which was, in my opinion, an awesome signing. So, I mean, the offense should be humming next year. So, I mean, what do you do here, Ned? You pick up something to help the defense, or you pick up maybe lineman or something to help protect Kyler?
Yeah, I think that's definitely both of them in play. I think it's going to be exactly that, an O-lineman or someone on the interior defense. I think this is where Derrick Brown goes. I think this is the sort of the floor for him. I think he'll go in that range of 8 below. They've actually been linked very heavily to Derrick Brown as well, so that's a good spot between 8 and 7 for Derrick Brown to sort of go. Again, big dude, home wrecker. Kudos to the Cardinals for getting that trade done. I don't know how the fuck they did that to get Hopkins over their side. They walked away with the table, the chips, everything in that sort of fucking betting situation.
Yeah. Unbelievable. I could not fucking believe it when I saw that pop up.
No, I don't understand how the fuck that happened. And I don't understand how when the Houston Texans were up 24-0, they thought to themselves, fuck, we need to run the ball more. Let's go and get DJ.
Yeah.
But even the fact they're looking to lock down Kenyon Drake, underrated running back. They've got Hopkins over there. They got, what's that other wide receiver? His name's fucking got me. So they're pretty stacked on offense. I think they're ready to go. You need someone like Derrick Brown. He's a fucking just every play fuck shit up kind of man. Monster, aggressive. There's a video I'll drop in here where he just body slams this bloke right on his head. He's the type of bloke you want.
All right, fair call. Now, let's move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, obviously, disappointing season last season. Injuries to the QBs, etc. And I mean, it looks like Gardner Minshew is going to be under center to start 2021. So, who do you pick up here, Ned?
It's so fucking disappointing. Just to have that much talent on defense and have it all gone. Like, Bouyer's gone, Ramsey's gone. So if Henderson's there, I think he's a lock to go here.
Yep.
Yannick Ngakoue, he's looking to get out as well. So they could be looking for the pass rusher to chase on out of LSU. But I think they're ultimately going to look for a wide receiver or a lineman. So if it's Wills or Wirfs that are left up there, I think they take the other one. So I think they're going O-line ultimately.
Yep, that's a fair call. And last, we'll finish with the 10th pick, the Cleveland Browns. Now, on that O-line theme, I guess, look, I think, I don't know, you know this shit better than me, but it seems like Cleveland would want to look towards an O-line as well, given the fact that they struggled so much last year in protecting Baker.
Exactly, mate. Everyone likes to pile on Baker about the season he had because he's fat and he's a bit of a mouthy bloke and all that sort of stuff. But
He is
ultimately, his
chubby.
O-line was absolutely horrendous. They've been linked pretty heavily to Mekhi Becton here. He's 2 meters tall, 369 pounds, just an absolute monster. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him or Andrew Thomas from Georgia go here. I think they're going O-line, but the way they like to go, that would not surprise me if they draft somewhere out of fucking left field and grab someone else. They're a bit crazy, the Browns, but I think it's going O-line.
That's true. The Browns never cease to amaze you come draft day, so that'll be an exciting pick at number 10. Well, that rounds out the top 10, Ned, and I think you're probably pretty much on the same page as most of the experts there. So let's get along to your best bets, and you've given me a few here. You've got about a dozen odd best bets that not only you've posted in the TryPod app, but you've sent these through to me as well. So I'll just go through these in the order that you've given them to me, and maybe you can just give just a line or two of reasoning on kind of why you chose that, and if you do happen to have the odds in front of you, you can let us know. But if not, people can search for their own. So you've got the first tackle taken. You mentioned this, as we got to the back end of that top 10, but you've got the first tackle taken as Jedrick Wills from Bama.
Yeah, I think he's he's got the higher upside, and I think that's what teams are going to look for. We got that one on Ladbrokes at $3.50, and it's dropped down to $2.10 now, so that's good in terms of value, and he's actually the favourite in that position. So,
yeah, and a few of those ones you've actually given out have certainly dropped. So what I'd say to all you guys is it's worth downloading the TryPod app, and it's worth giving Neddy a follow, because generally the bets that you give out for the draft, they do tend to shorten. Now, the next one you've got is no running back taken in the first round. Now, I did want to ask you a couple of these. If you've got the odds, that's great. But look, what I'd say is that just a trend that sort of less teams are looking towards the running backs in the draft? Is it because there's no star running backs in this year's draft? Or is it honestly because a season like this season kind of showed that, a running back like Kenyon Drake, who was relatively not doing great there on a shitty team, you can flip him onto the cards and all of a sudden he's a superstar, which kind of tells you, look, maybe running backs aren't that important. But what I would also add is, if they're not that important, then why the fuck are teams paying these guys like Zeke, like Todd Gurley, a boatload of money?
Well, I think it's sort of the hot topic at the moment, especially in the analytics sort of side of things, that running backs aren't that valued. There is guys that I would take in the first round, like Swift from Georgia and Edwards-Helaire, who's got an awesome fucking last name. Both of those guys deserve to go in the first round, and you sort of could take them in the first round because then you get the fifth-year option, and typically you can just run them into the ground for those 5 years and fucking turf them out. I think some of the people are still stuck on that old school and they're paying the wrong guys. I think probably Zeke is worth the money. He seems durable. I know McCaffrey is worth the money.
Yep.
Gurley, I think, was just a bad decision altogether. But I think, just with the way the league's going, I think everyone's sort of cottoning on that you don't need to. Like, you look at the Super Bowl, Damian Williams and Mostert were both undrafted running backs. So I don't think you particularly need to do that anymore. And I think that everyone's sort of just going, fuck it, maybe if we come up later, we can grab someone else instead.
Yeah, that's right, because, that happened a fair bunch. Like, not only just Kenyon Drake, but like you mentioned, most that came out of fucking nowhere on peanuts money, so maybe other teams are thinking they can go towards that as well. The next bet on here, Ned, is Cole Kmet to be the first tight end drafted. Now, I'll ask you not only that part, but the over-under set at around 44 and a half, I think. So obviously you would bet the under for that also.
I sort of stayed away from that one. I just bet the first tight end in general out of the whole list. We got that one at $1.80, and now it's down to $1.30. This is an extremely weak tight end class where he's the only sort of viable talent. I don't particularly know in orders of numbers where it might be good to sort of take him. That's why I sort of took around this one. He's, again, you don't want to say anything's a lock, but I'll eat my hat if he's not the first tight end taken.
All right, I'll hold you to that, mate. And I'll be if I'm watching the draft with you, bring your fucking hat along, mate.
I'll bring bucket up.
Next one on the board, mate. You mentioned him earlier, Derrick Brown to be picked under 8.5, so picked the 8th pick or beforehand. Now I've looked at a few mock drafts. Most have him sort of going number 7 to the Panthers. Now, if the Panthers do something crazy like take a QB, do you think that the Cards would then pick him up at number 8, or do you think it's kind of Panthers or earlier or bust?
No, I think that's why I sort of liked it, because it's sort of juggled between the Panthers at 7 and the Cardinals at 8. I'm not even ruling out Detroit maybe getting a trade and still landing back in there somewhere. It depends. They would love someone like Derrick Brown. We got ahead of this really good too on BetEasy. We got it under 8.5 at 225, and now it's down to under 7.5 at 187. So we got ahead of that one pretty well. But yeah, I just think it's a great landing spot for him again around that 7 or 8 mark. I think that's where he's going to go.
Yeah, 100%. And that makes all the difference. It's kind of like with, team over-unders win totals for a season. Like the difference between 7.5 and 8.5 is just absolutely massive. It's worth like 50 cents. But the difference between 7.5 and 8.5 in a draft sometimes isn't that much. But when you think that the 7th team or the 8th team could take it, then it makes all the difference. Let's move on to the next one that you've sent through, Ned. Jedrick Wills to be the first offensive line taken. You said that they're looking at taking him around sort of 7th to 8th in the first. Is that what you kind of expect?
Yeah, I think he'd be a top 10 pick. It's either between Wills or Wirfs. We got him at $3.50. Now it's down to $2.10 on lads, so we got ahead of that one as well. I just think we know how important tackles are in this league, and there's 3 or 4 of them that are all going to go between the early to mid part. I think he'll be the first one gone. Like I said, he has the larger upside, but it's pretty close between him and Wirfs.
Yeah, and it is. You're right. It seems like there's, most drafts they sort of have at least 5, if not 6 or 7, tackles being taken in the first round. So certainly an important position. Next up, and I found this one interesting, Ned, and I'd like to get your take on this one. You have the first wide receiver taken as Henry Ruggs. You also have another bet of him being taken under 14.5. He's obviously an Alabama wide receiver. Now, a lot of people saying he'd be a good fit for someone like the 49ers, who have, some receivers that did quite well this year, but relatively lesser known names. But you've still got, the other Bama, wideout, Jerry Jeudy, and you've got CeeDee Lamb in there as well, who was a beast for Oklahoma, but once again plays in, a conference that is constantly in shootouts, so maybe he does look a little bit better. I'd like to get your take on that, why you're taking him before, and if it has anything to do with the bad Wonderlic tests that the other 2 wide receivers had.
At the start, this was one of the early bets that I put through. This was more just about value. Out of all the receivers that are there, he's the only one that really has an elite trait, and that's speed. And after Tyreek Hill and Pat Mahomes, I think it's going to be valued. I mean, when it's at $7, you sort of have to shoot your shot there.
Yeah, right.
Under 14.5, we got that one at $2.10, and now it's down to 13.5 for $1.87 because there's that stretch of 11, 12, 13 of the Jets, Raiders, and San Fran. They're all after wide receivers. The Jets have lost anyone. They got fuck all there. They got rid of the burner who's gone to Carolina now. So they're going to be looking for speed. I'd hate to see him go there, but Kyle Shanahan's going to be all over this bloke. And as the old Raiders mantra is, they love speed. So I think John Gruden could be after him. I think that's just the perfect sweet spot for them. Judy's sort of been falling down the board a little bit, and CD's sort of been coming up as well. And I wouldn't be surprised at the end of the day if Judy actually does go first, because he's sort of meant to be the number 1 guy the whole time. But you can't train speed, and Ruggs has something that very few in the NFL has at that sort of speed.
And at the same time, it sort of seems like those 3 are, sort of in a league above the rest of the wideouts in this year's draft. So if you're getting $7 in what you think is, 1 in 3 or better, then that's certainly good value. Now, this is an interesting one you sent through as well. You have CeeDee Lamb going under 12.5 or before the 12.5 pick. Now, I'd like to get your thinking on this one, because if you think Ruggs is getting picked first, then I guess you're thinking that if it drops to sort of 11 or 12, then one of the Jets or Oakland will take Lamb over Judy, then I guess. Yeah,
I was sort of betting against myself here a little bit, and like I said, the Henry Ruggs going first was more just about I like the
value
number for that.
Yeah,
correct. But CeeDee Lamb, that's sort of been coming in pretty hot at the moment. That Oakland is actually really big on him, and he could actually be the first one taken. So that was more about just getting the number before it sort of move too much.
Sure.
He is pretty elite in what he does. His hands are fucking phenomenal. He's like DeAndre Hopkins, but he's actually better with the ball in his hand. He's almost like a Michael Thomas. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders grab him, and I think they're sitting at 12. So that's why I went for 12.5.
Yep, that's a fair call. Next one on the list, Isaiah Simmons under 6.5. You mentioned this one earlier. I think you have him going 4th to the Giants. Now, obviously, if he goes 4th to the Giants, your bet wins there. Now, I'll ask if the Giants don't take him at 4, is that bet cooked? Because I mean, you'd think that the Dolphins are certainly taking a quarterback, and the Chargers kind of need a quarterback as well at 5 and 6.
Yeah, it is sort of a bit cooked, unless, like we say, the Chargers sort of fall in love with him and grab him. I do sort of believe heavily in the fucking shit that's coming out of the Giants. I think if no one wants to move and they can't move back, I think there's a very good chance it's either him or an offensive lineman. So that was just about that one. I do believe there's sort of sources that keep saying that's who they're heavy on.
Okay, fair enough. The next one up, Justin Jefferson, under 21.5. He's the LSU wide receiver. Now, there's sort of 5 or 6 wideouts that are meant to go in the first round. Now, I don't know, is this year especially strong for wideouts, would you say? Or
very, very strong, very deep. Like, you can even get some at the top of the second, but these sort of ones that are in the first round are in a tier of their own. Justin Jefferson sort of, I imagine he will be the 4th guy off the board. And when you start looking around that middle of the pack, who's going to need one? Like, the Raiders could skip out on taking him earlier, hoping to get him later. But then you have a team like Philadelphia who is just screaming for more wide receiver talent, and they happen to sit at 22. So that was sort of the part of – no, sorry, they're sitting at – can't remember what number they're sitting at. But anyway, it's around that middle part of the
I guess, yeah, you'd think, yeah.
Yeah. So that was sort of my reasoning for that bet there. That one's dropped down from 190 to 160 as well, so it's sort of leaning in our favour there.
Yeah, you seem to have been pretty spot on with most of these, and I do wonder whether it's just like you were spot on or it's – you know, a couple of 1,000 people in the TryPod app getting on them and pushing the price down. But I would assume you'd been ahead of the money most of the time. Now, same number, 21.5, but you've got Kenneth Murray, the linebacker from Oklahoma, going over 21.5. Now, I guess you're down on him for some reason.
The only team, that I'm concerned about taking him would actually be Denver, and Denver's one of the teams that are in the hunt for a wide receiver as well. Like if Judy or Jefferson or CeeDee for whatever reason start sliding back, I think Denver's going to pull the trigger to pair Sutton up with someone and give Locke more help. But we also know, like I remember I was sitting with Jonesy last year and we were both surprised that they didn't take the middle linebacker that was on the board. I think they traded with the Steelers. The Steelers ended up taking, I can't remember his name. That is one of the staples for the Broncos coach. His staples for his defenses. He loves to have a good middle linebacker, so I'm a bit worried about there. But if it goes past Denver, there's not really a big need for any of the teams in the middle. Like the Raiders are there, but they've spent a fortune on linebackers this offseason. So I think that's where he could sort of fall and someone towards the back was more likely to grab him.
Okay, yep, that's fair enough. Next one, you've talked about this one a little bit, but it's Justin Herbert to go under 5.5 in the draft. Now, you've touched on it a little bit, but I guess it's obviously not only because you think Herbert's probably a better prospect or less risky than Tua, but at the same time, let's say, when you choose under 5.5, is that because solely you think that Herbert is a better prospect and less risky than Tua, or also because there is a chance that there could be 3 quarterbacks taken in the top 5? I know you got on this at 275. Is that still available?
No, it's down to 187 on Lads.
Woo!
I don't know what it's like on anywhere else, but I don't think he's a better prospect. That's a move, baby. I don't know if he's the better prospect. I certainly would not take him if I was the Dolphins, but I just have a feeling that's what's going to happen. And teams, when they do need a quarterback, will be aggressive and come up. And to be honest, there's probably only about 3 or 4 teams now in the league that have a spare spot at the fucking quarterback chair. And a lot of them are at the top, so I think that's still going to put the pressure. I think it's still a good market there. Chargers might try and jump the Dolphins. Dolphins might sit pretty and take it anyway. So I think he goes around there.
Yeah, and that's a fair call. And honestly, at the same time, with the draft, sometimes it's not even the best choice. It's just the choice that the GM makes. It's not going to get him fired. And I think, the Dolphins having such bad QB play for so long, you're not getting fired for taking Herbert at 5, Yeah. All right, next up, you've got Jordan Love, the Utah State QB, going over 17.5. So you are a little bit down on him. Now, I was going to add just quickly, is some of the reasoning, he plays for Utah State. They're in the Mountain West Conference, the same conference as Boise State. I played in that conference when I went to Boise State, played for the tennis. Now, has this got something to do with that conference being piss weak? Apart from Boise, it's a pretty piss weak conference. So, is his stats jacked up and that's why you're kind of a little down on him?
Okay, I'll say this thing about Jordan Love. If we got all the quarterbacks in this year's draft, right, and their possible ceiling of what they could be, if everyone got to that level, Jordan Love would have the highest out of anyone. He has the most superstar ability. He has the best arm, most accurate. Just his processing and the way he goes through things is fucking rubbish. He needs all the training in the world. But if you're looking for someone with the best arm, it's Jordan Love. I think you're going to get someone maybe towards the back end. That's why I think over 17.5. And that's actually moved up to 19.5 and down to $1.55 on Ladbrokes at the moment.
Okay.
I think the teams like the Saints or the Packers even could be coming in. Don't fucking sleep on the Patriots either. I think they could be grabbing him, well aware that he is a developmental project and he is quite possibly the best quarterback in this class.
Interesting. Yeah, right. And now you touched on this bloke earlier, but Henderson, you've got him going under 12.5, the cornerback from Florida. Now, you mentioned it before. Is that just pretty much the importance of having, a good cornerback in this, in this league now, and just the talent of the guy?
That, and along with around that same stretch there we spoke about, I know that Atlanta's very heavy on him and they're looking to be aggressive and move up. I know Jacksonville's there, they need him. Carolina need him. Even the Cardinals wouldn't mind him. And then even when you got Jacksonville or whatever sitting at 9, there's too many teams that sort of need a top-tier cornerback that I think someone could move up. I think 12.5 is way too high for someone as talented as Henderson.
Yeah, that's a fair call. And then the last one, just quickly, because you've touched on this a fair bit, but Jeff Okudah, under 4.5. You obviously think he's the best cornerback in the draft. Now, has that number changed? Because I feel like it can't really change. They could only really change the juice on that 4.5, surely, right?
Yeah, it's dropped down to $1.87 from $2.05.
Okay.
But again, this is pretty much on the fact that I don't think anyone's going to come up and trade with the Lions. I think the Lions sort of have to stay put in almost the handcuffs and have to take him. So that's why I took that one pretty early on.
Yep, no, that's a fair call. And that does it for your best bets, Neds. Thanks for going through all of them. There's a shitload there. I think there was about a dozen or so. We've got before we let you get out of here, mate. We've got a few mailbag questions I'd like you to answer from some of the guys in the TryPod. So the first one is, and you could probably break this down better than me, but how good is Chase Young really? I mean, can you see him becoming one of those elite guys?
Yeah, as I was saying before, everything that he plays with at the moment, length, power, technique, is fucking top notch, and he will be, I think, one of the best pass rushers in the league within the next couple of years. That 16.5 sacks in 11 games, and towards the back end of the season, teams were specifically game planning for him. And when you got someone of that talent, the defense can dictate to the offense and not the other way around.
Yep.
And you saw it when Clemson played them. There was no 5-7 step drops anytime Clemson played them. It was 3 steps, bang, get the ball out. Everything was short yards, screens, all that sort of stuff. And that's not how Clemson played. And they ended up winning that game. But if you can do that to an elite college football program like that, it's going to transfer over to the NFL. He is the next best thing, I'm telling you now.
And especially also, you mentioned the 16 sacks in 11 games, but it's the pressures too that, some of those don't sort of get, properly accounted for in the stats. It's just like you said, having to take 3 or 4 steps as opposed to 5, 6, 7. It makes such a difference. So the next one for you, Ned, obviously you see those kind of 3 top-tier wide receivers in this year's draft at kind of the similar-ish level. Which one ends up being the best one in the NFL, let's say maybe in 5 years' time?
I know it's a bit of a cop-out, but it all depends on where people land.
Sure.
If you get Ruggs and he goes to the Jets...
Yeah.
But if Ruggs ends up going at 13 to San Francisco, he's going to be a fucking nightmare. And I sort of don't trust some of those teams early on in the play-calling sense, but I know it's a cop-out, but if I got to shoot my shot, I honestly love what I see from CeeDee Lamb. I've got a couple of highlights that I'll throw in this video here. That one-handed catch, it wasn't actually a catch, it was just out of bounds, but it's one of the best one-handed catches I've ever fucking seen.
Yeah, I think I do remember that one actually. And on the same sort of thing, in terms of the future, obviously you've got that top tier 3 with Burrow, Herbert, and Tua. How do they compare, do you think, to the kind of current crop of rookie second-year QBs in the league at the moment? And which one of those 3 do you think ends up being the best in 5 years' time?
Again, that's sort of a little bit hard because I don't know how much I trust Burrow sitting in that offense up there. It all depends where they sort of land, but I am a sort of stickler for someone that does go later, that does have the arm. That's the sort of shit. I might be a sucker for it, but if Jordan Love goes to somewhere, as much as I'd fucking hate it, if the Saints move or sit pat and draft him, I'm fucked. I'm fucked. It's just going to be Pat Mahomes in the NFC South. So I'd love to see sort of an underdweller come up like that. That would be my sort of guess, but I think for the safe pick and the most boring pick, it'd just be Burrow. Yeah,
that's a fair call. And I guess if you're a GM, that's probably what they're thinking as well. You take Burrow and you're not going to get fired for that one. That's it, Ned. That's it. We've gone through it all. We did all right, I think. 40 minutes. We kept on task. Anything you think you want to add? Any tips for people that are betting before we get out of here? I mean, a lot of the, like you said, a lot of the bets have moved, but any tips you sort of have for anyone putting on their bets now?
I'm trying to stay away from my phone. Otherwise, I'll just keep putting more and more bets in. Right. So I'm just going to stop that and stay away from it at the moment. But everyone keep your social distancing. I might be having some live beers with you on Friday. We'll see how we go.
Sounds like a plan to me, buddy. Thanks again for joining us, and thanks everyone for watching another episode of the TryPod. We will see you next time. Stay safe.